project was not just about the history of magic, but it focused on the idea of emotions, and the emotions that lead people and that have led people for many centuries to enact rituals in order to protect themselves or to face up to the difficulties that all of us in the past and in the present have.
The nature of the space is we have two very domestic-sized rooms with low ceilings and then this very grand ceiling height in the middle. They're sort of trying to find a kind of materiality or a kind of a form to hold them, and we struck upon this idea of using a very skeletal timber frame and wrapping it in a mesh. And it was the idea of creating sort of sense of intrigue, a mystery, acts like a veil where you can see objects hidden through it and get glimpses of people as they pass through, and there's a sort of sense of depth and play.
So we have 200 objects roughly on show, and the history of magic as a practice runs through the three galleries, and it's punctuated in each of the galleries with contemporary artworks.
So my feeling about actually the shadows on the walls are really important, because the shadows represent the spirits. It could also be the smoke, it could also be the flames of the fires. But the shadows exist, but they don't exist, because the shadows are just reflections from the imperfections that I put into the glass when we blew it. And so if you turn the light on, then the shadows disappear. And so it's this feeling that there's this hidden side of life, that things don't exist, that they would exist, but they don't exist.
This heart, is the piercing of the heart is all about protection from witches coming
yes.
down. But it's also, we get this idea of popular sort of folklore that the witch can visit as a shadow as well. So some of the things that people say is, I saw her in the room, or I saw
yes.
something come down the chimney.
Yes.
It wasn't the real witch, I think, bewitched me. It was her shadow that did this.
So the exhibition begins with a series of questions attached to objects, and the questions are to everybody in every culture. Everybody has different ways of dealing with the sense of vulnerability, of fear, of love, of sense of loss, and the desire to be protected. Some of these objects in this room were found inside walls, under floorboards, and up chimneys. And the construction does that. It's almost a big skeleton of a house, as if the house was either being constructed or being deconstructed. And it gives the sense of walking through that skeleton. Each room responds to the mood of the particular concept of the exhibition. So there are over 200 historical objects in the exhibition, but we really wanted to bring it up to now and involve the visitors so that they would realize that magic is not to do with the past nor with the countries at a long distance away from us, but with things that would relate to them as well. And that's why we thought of bringing in 3 contemporary artists. The way we did that is that each artist was paired with one of the historians, and during a period of 2 years, the artist and the historian talked through and visited each other's spaces.
I think it allows you to imagine it, and I've very deliberately desaturated it of any colour. So you're kind of looking at the structure of the flames and the way that they actually kind of move, and I think it kind of allows you to read something into it, almost like an ink blot.
Well, I think when we first started talking about this, there was a sense that I was kind of informing you about some historical ideas about witchcraft.
Yeah.
And many of the pictures you can see in the room here have these similar kinds of very static images of smoke and fire coming out of witches' cauldrons and so on. But of course, that, as you say, given that this is essentially about emotional power, that there's only so much you can get out of historical documents. Somebody can tell you that they're angry, or you can see the results of someone being angry in a witchcraft accusation, but actually I think it's where it moves into the sublime that it's much harder to do historically, and this is where I think the art takes over. And so to have something which is actually addressing simmering emotional power of a witchcraft accusation that would then explode finally, I think is incredibly powerful in this room, which, as I say, is full of static objects and images of witchcraft with all that kind of rage and power behind them. But here, as a culmination of all that, we see something that really makes you feel something of that latent anger and rage, which then at a certain point would then explode
and then disappear. I think a lot of a lot of this work feels to me is completely informed by the conversations going to Cambridge University, you organising, with James, a really careful kind of orchestration of what we looked at, the chronology of it, the kind of, I was getting an education as well as being inspired.
So we commissioned a piece from Ackroyd and Harvey, who were in conversation, in dialogue with Sophie Page for a period of almost 2 years, and were exposed to the ideas that really are part of this first room, or the first room of the exhibition, on the medieval cosmos, the idea of connection with the spheres and the medieval imagination on how the world and the cosmos was constructed.
Well, one of the things that we've understood from our conversations with you, Sophie, is that the crystalline sphere is actually quite an innovation within the medieval cosmology. Is that correct?
Yes. So in the 12th and 13th centuries, medieval Latin scholars started reading and thinking about and assimilating the Aristotelian cosmos, which has the Earth in the middle, the spheres of the 4 elements, the sphere of the moon, the spheres of the planets. And the celestial spheres were always uncertain in number. And one of the things that Christian authors wanted to add, and did add in their images, was a crystalline sphere that represents the line in Genesis that said God created waters above the heavens and on earth. So what could these waters in the heavens be? Because it's hard to imagine what water in the kind of upper spheres of the cosmos might look like. So they have a white sphere, crystalline sphere, often represented in images, but scholars really disagreed about what it might be like, whether it was hard crystal like frozen ice, whether it was liquid inside and flowing.
It's interesting because when this piece emerged earlier from the mould, it had an ice-like quality to it actually. I mean, crystalline, but almost, it seemed very kind of resonant of ice as well, and I recall very well that reference as well. So I think
but
on that level,
it is. I mean, it was grown in liquid, wasn't it? So it has been liquid, and now it's crystalline.
That's
so
right.
it's sort of gone from one to the other. So
it has. It's kind of transmuted. Yeah.
When we were thinking about the exhibition's title, we were toying with the idea of using the word magic or the expression magical thinking. Magical thinking, of course, encompasses more than just the practice of magic, and it's something that everybody relates to, and in a way everybody is involved with.
Thank you.